I heard my son whispering to his wife in the hallway outside my bedroom door. "Sure, honey. Move in with us. He'll pay for everything." His voice was low, careful, like he thought I was already asleep. But I wasn't. I was lying there in the dark, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, listening to my own blood plan my funeral while I was still breathing. My name is Vernon Hayes. I'm 73 years old. And back in March of 2019, I was living in a modest two-bedroom house in Richmond, Virginia, the same house where I raised that boy, where his mama took her last breath, where I thought I'd die with some dignity left. For 3 days after I heard those words, Marcus avoided me, wouldn't look me in the eye at breakfast, started parking his car down the street instead of in my driveway. I knew something was coming. I could feel it in my bones the way you feel a storm before the first drop of rain. I was sitting in my recliner, drinking coffee that had gone cold, when I heard the rumble of a truck engine. I looked out the window and saw Marcus pulling up with his wife Shanice and a U-Haul trailer hitched to his SUV. My heart dropped into my stomach. They didn't call, didn't text, just showed up like they owned the place. When Marcus got out and walked toward my front gate, he had this smile on his face, fake as a $3 bill. Shanice was behind him, already on her phone, probably telling her girlfriends how they were about to move into a free house. But when they opened that gate and stepped onto my property, both of them froze. Their mouths fell open. Shanice dropped her phone. Marcus staggered backward like he'd been punched, because what they saw wasn't what they expected. Not even close. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Because this story gets darker before it gets light. And I promise you, by the end of this, you'll understand why some battles are worth fighting, even when they cost you everything. I need to take you back to understand how we got here. Back to when Marcus was still my little man, before greed turned him into something I didn't recognize. It was 1982 when he was born, right here in Richmond, at the old Medical College of Virginia Hospital. His mama, Lorraine, she labored for 18 hours in that delivery room, and when they finally put him in my arms, I cried like a baby myself. He had her eyes, soft brown, full of light, and these tiny fingers that wrapped around my thumb like he was holding on for dear life. I remember thinking right then, in that moment, that I would do anything for this child. Anything. I worked double shifts at the Newport News shipyard just to keep formula in the cabinet and clothes on his back. Lorraine worked at the post office downtown, sorting mail and dealing with angry customers who thought their bills should arrive faster. Together we made it work. We weren't rich, far from it, but we were solid. We had love in that house, real love, and we had each other. That was supposed to be enough. Marcus grew up good. Real good. Played Little League baseball at Battery Park, made honor roll every semester, sang in the church choir every Sunday at New Hope Baptist on Hull Street. I used to sit in the third pew and watch him up there in his little white robe, singing His Eyes on the Sparrow with his whole heart, and I'd think to myself, this boy is going to be something special. When he graduated high school in 2000, I was so proud I thought my chest might burst. He was the first Hayes to get a college degree, went to Virginia State University down in Petersburg, studied business administration. I paid every penny of that tuition out of my savings, money I'd been putting away since he was born. $15,000 a year for 4 years. $60,000 total. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. That's what fathers do. That's what I thought mattered. After college, Marcus got a job at a marketing firm in downtown Richmond on East Carey Street. Started at $35,000 a year, which seemed like a fortune to me. Met Shanice Watkins at a company mixer in 2008. She was pretty, real pretty, with smooth, dark skin, long hair, and a smile that could light up a room. But something about that smile never reached her eyes. I noticed it the first time I met her at Sunday dinner. She looked around my house like she was calculating its value, touching the furniture, asking too many questions about things that weren't her business. But I kept my mouth shut and don't interfere with his son's heart, even when his gut is screaming warnings. They got married in 2010 at a fancy venue in Short Pump that cost more than my first car. I paid for half that wedding, $12,000, because Shanice's people didn't have much, and Marcus was too proud to have a small ceremony. Lorraine was already sick by then, stage 3 breast cancer that had spread to her lymph nodes. She wore a wig to the wedding and smiled through the pain because she didn't want to ruin Marcus's big day. 6 months later, she died. Right there in our bedroom, holding my hand, her skin, paper thin and cold. The last thing she said to me was, "Take care of our boy Vernon. Promise me." I promised her I would. I kept that promise, even when it nearly killed me. Even when that promise became the rope Marcus and Shanice tried to hang me with. After Lorraine passed, the house felt like a tomb. Every room held memories that cut like broken glass. Her coffee cup still in the cabinet, her sweaters still in the closet, her reading glasses on the nightstand. Marcus would visit on Sundays, bring me groceries from Kroger, sit with me for an hour or two while we watched the Redskins lose another game. But over time, those visits got shorter. 30 minutes, 20. Then he'd just drop off the groceries and leave, saying he and Shanice had plans. Shanice rarely came inside. When she did, she'd walk through my house like she was on some kind of real estate show, touching the crown molding, testing the hardwood floors with her heel, asking questions that made my skin crawl. "This house paid off, Mr. Hayes?" she'd ask, sweet as pie. "What you think it's worth these days? Housing market's real hot. You ever think about downsizing? Moving into one of those nice senior communities?" I'd just nod and change the subject. But I felt it every time. Felt her measuring my life in square footage and property value. Marcus started talking about money more. About how expensive everything was. How their rent kept going up. How Shanice wanted to quit her administrative job at the hospital and start a catering business, but needed startup capital. Every conversation circled back to money, and every time it did, I felt a little piece of my son slip away from me, like watching someone drown in slow motion and not being able to reach them. Dan, One night in early March, Marcus called me around 8 o'clock, said he wanted to come by and talk about something important. I made him his favorite meal: fried catfish with hot sauce, collard greens with ham hocks, cornbread with honey butter, and we sat at the kitchen table like old times. But he barely touched his plate. Kept looking at Shanice, who was texting the whole time, her thumbs flying across her phone screen, not even pretending to be interested in the conversation. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat and set down his fork. The sound of metal hitting the plate seemed too loud in the quiet kitchen. "Dad," he said slowly, "we've been talking, me and Shanice. We think it's time you consider moving in with us." I put my fork down and looked at him hard. "Why would I do that?" "Because you're getting older. You're all alone in this big house. What if something happens? What if you fall? What if you have a heart attack and nobody's here?" I felt my jaw tighten. "I'm 73, not 93. I can still wipe my own behind, son. I can still cook my own food and pay my own bills." Shanice snorted, a sharp little sound that made me want to throw her out right then. But Marcus kept going, his voice getting more desperate. "We just think it makes sense. Financially. Practically. You could sell this place, move in with us. We'd take care of you. You wouldn't have to worry about maintenance or property taxes or any of that stuff." "And what happens to the money from selling my house?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Marcus hesitated. His eyes darted to Shanice, and I saw the truth right there in that look. But Shanice didn't hesitate. "She never did. Well, we'd use it to get a bigger place. One with space for all of us. A proper room for you. Maybe a mother-in-law suite. It's an investment, Mr. Hayes. Smart money management." I felt my blood pressure rising. "An investment in what?" "In family," Marcus said quickly. But I heard the lie in his voice thick as molasses. I heard everything they weren't saying. They didn't want to take care of me. They didn't want me living with them. They wanted my house. They wanted my money. They wanted to cash out 40 years of my blood, sweat, and tears so they could live in some McMansion in the suburbs. And they thought I was too old and too dumb to see through it. I told them no that night. Told them firmly, clearly, without room for interpretation. I wasn't selling. I wasn't moving. And we weren't discussing it again. Marcus looked hurt, like a child who'd been denied dessert. Shanice looked furious, her pretty face twisting into something ugly. "You're being unreasonable," she said, standing up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "You're being selfish. We're trying to help you, and you're throwing it back in our faces like we're the enemy." "Help me?" I laughed, bitter and sharp. "You want to help me? Come visit more than once a month. Call just to say hello instead of asking for something. Bring your future children to meet their grandfather. That's help. What you're offering is robbery dressed up in good intentions." They left without finishing their food. Marcus wouldn't look at me as he walked out. Shanice slammed the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. I sat there alone in the kitchen, staring at 3 plates of food nobody wanted, wondering where I went wrong, wondering when my son stopped being my son and started being a stranger with my last name. That was 2 weeks before I heard him whispering outside my bedroom door. 2 weeks before everything exploded and I learned exactly what Marcus and Shanice were capable of. 2 weeks before I decided that if they wanted a war, I'd give them one they'd never forget, did they? The next morning I woke up before dawn with a knot in my stomach the size of a fist. I kept replaying Marcus's words in my head on a loop. "Sure, honey, move in with us. He'll pay for everything." It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. Bleh. Casual, conspiratorial, like I was already a done deal. Like I was already a problem solved, a check cashed, a property deed signed over. I got dressed in the dark, my hands shaking so bad I could barely button my shirt. Went to the kitchen to make coffee, but I spilled the grounds all over the counter because my fingers wouldn't cooperate. I tried to tell myself I'd misheard, that maybe Marcus meant something else, that maybe I was being paranoid in my old age, seeing threats where there weren't any. But deep down, in that place where truth lives, even when we don't want to face it, I knew. I knew my son was planning something behind my back, and it had nothing to do with love or concern or family. It had to do with money, with greed, with the kind of cold calculation that turns children into vultures circling a man who isn't even dead yet. That morning, around 9 o'clock, Marcus came by like nothing had happened. Walked right in. I'd given him a key years ago, back when I trusted him, with a bag of groceries and that same fake smile plastered across his face. "Morning, Pops," he said, kissing me on the forehead like I was a child who needed comforting. "Brought you some essentials. Dark. Figured you might be running low." I watched him unpack the bags with jerky mechanical movements. Bread, milk, eggs, canned soup, instant coffee, frozen dinners, things I could have bought myself. Things I had bought myself just 3 days ago. "You didn't have to do that," I said, my voice flat. "I know, but I wanted to." "You're my father. I take care of you." The words sounded hollow, like dialogue from a bad play. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for just a second I saw my little boy again. The one who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms, scared of the lightning. The one who cried when his pet goldfish died and made me dig a grave in the backyard and say a proper prayer, breathing. The one who looked at me like I hung the moon and stars. But then Shanice's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Baby, ask him about the house." She was still in the car, but her window was down, and her voice carried. Marcus's face changed. The little boy disappeared, replaced by something harder, something I didn't recognize. He cleared his throat and started putting groceries away, not looking at me. "Dad, I've been thinking." "About what we talked about last week, you selling the house." I said, "No, Marcus. My voice was firm, but my heart was pounding. I know, but just hear me out. B- Please, Shanice and we've been looking at places. There's this beautiful house in Henrico County off Patterson Avenue. 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, big backyard. Perfect for when we have kids. We could all live there together. You'd have your own space on the first floor. We'd take care of everything. You wouldn't have to worry about bills or maintenance or mowing the lawn or any of it. Or my independence, I snapped. Or my dignity. Or the fact that this is my house, my home, the place where I built a life with your mother? Marcus flinched like I'd slapped him. That's not what I'm saying. Ben, what are you saying? Because it sounds like you want me to hand over everything I worked for, 40 years of mortgage payments, of fixing leaky roofs, of painting and repairing and maintaining, so you and your wife can live in a mansion you can't afford. It's not like that. His voice was defensive now, angry. Then what's it like, Marcus? Explain it to me. Make me understand why my own son is standing in my kitchen, trying to convince me to give up the only thing I have left.
He couldn't answer.
Just stood there with a box of cereal in his hand, mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. That's when Shanice appeared in the doorway, arms crossed over her chest, hip cocked like she owned the place. Mr. Hayes, with all due respect, you're not getting any younger. This house is too much for you. The yard's overgrown. The gutters need cleaning. The roof probably needs replacing. You're being stubborn about something that makes perfect sense. Stubborn? I felt heat rising up my neck. Girl, I bought this house in 1978 for $32,000. Paid it off in 2003. I raised my son here. My wife died here. Baby, I know every creak in these floors, every crack in these walls. And you think I'm stubborn because I don't want to give it up so you can play house in Henrico County? Her face went red. That's not fair. Fair, I laughed, and it came out harsh and bitter. You want to talk about fair? I paid for Marcus's education. $60,000. I paid for your wedding. $12,000. I gave you both everything I had when you needed it. And now you want the only thing I got left. You want my home. And you're calling me stubborn because I won't lie down and let you take it. Dad? Marcus started, but I held up my hand. Get out! The words hung in the air like smoke. What? Marcus looked genuinely shocked, like he couldn't believe I'd said it. You heard me. Get out of my house. Both of you. Breathing. Shanice's mouth dropped open. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious. You come into my home, disrespect me, try to manipulate me into giving up everything, and you think I'm just going to smile and take it? I'm 73 years old, but I ain't senile. I see exactly what you're doing. And I want you out. Now. Marcus set the cereal box down on the counter with a thud. His face had gone pale. Fine, fine. We'll go, but you're making a mistake, Dad. We're trying to help you, and you're too proud to see it. If this is help, I'd hate to see what harm looks like." They left, but as they walked out, I heard Shanice hissing at Marcus in the driveway. "I told you this wouldn't work. Your father's too stubborn. We need a different approach." And that's when I knew. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They'd be back, and next time they wouldn't ask permission. For 3 days I didn't hear from Marcus. No calls, no texts, no Sunday visit, nothing. It was the longest we'd gone without speaking since he was 16, and got mad at me for not letting him take the car to a party where I knew they'd be drinking. But this silence was different. This silence had weight, like a physical thing pressing down on my chest. This silence felt like abandonment. I tried to keep myself busy, tried to pretend it didn't bother me. I worked in the garden, pulling weeds from around the tomato plants Lorraine had planted 5 years ago before she got sick. They kept coming back every spring, wild and stubborn, refusing to die even though she was gone. I watered them and talked to them like she used to, feeling foolish but doing it anyway. Da watched old westerns on the television. John Wayne and Clint Eastwood, men who knew how to stand their ground. I went to church on Sunday and sat in the back pew way in the corner where nobody would bother me. Pastor Daniels preached about forgiveness and family, about how the bonds of blood are stronger than the bonds of anger. But the whole time, my mind was somewhere else. I kept thinking about Marcus as a boy. The way he used to run to me when I came home from work, arms wide, yelling, "Daddy! Daddy!" like I was a superhero who'd saved the world that day. The way he'd sit on my shoulders at the 4th of July parade, his little hands gripping my head for balance. The way he looked at me during Lorraine's funeral, 17 years old and broken, eyes red from crying, and I had to be strong for both of us, even though I wanted to fall apart. Where did that boy go? When did he stop seeing me as his father and start seeing me as an obstacle? When did money become more important than the man who gave him life? On the 3rd day, late afternoon, with the sun starting to sink, I was sitting on the porch drinking sweet tea when my neighbor, Mrs. Gladys Freeman, came over. She was 80 and years old, sharp as a tack, and didn't take nonsense from nobody. Gladys had lived next door for 23 years, and in all that time I'd never seen her back down from anything or anyone. "Vernon," she said, settling into the wicker chair next to mine with a sigh, "you look troubled. More troubled than usual."
I'm fine, Gladys.
I tried to keep my voice light, but it came out heavy. "Don't lie to an old woman. I've known you too long for that. It's Marcus, isn't it?" I turned to her, surprised. "How'd you know?" She gave me a look that said I was being dense. "Because I've been watching that boy and his wife circle this house like sharks for the past year. And because I saw him leave here 3 days ago, looking like someone had slapped him. What happened? I sighed and told her everything. About the conversation, about the whispering, about their plan to get me to sell the house. When I finished, Gladys nodded slowly, like she'd suspected as much. "Let me guess," she said. "He wants you to move in with them, sell this place, and use the money to buy something bigger." "How'd you know?" "Because I've seen it before, Vernon. I've seen it a dozen times in this neighborhood alone. Children who can't wait for their parents to die so they can get the inheritance. Only now they don't want to wait. They want it while you're still breathing." She shook her head, disgusted. My own daughter tried the same thing 10 years ago. Wanted me to sign over my deed so she could take care of me. Found out later she'd already talked to a real estate agent, already had the place appraised, already had her eyes on a condo in Virginia Beach. "What'd you do?" I asked, leaning forward. Told her to kick rocks. Told her this was my house, and I'd leave it when I was dead and not a moment sooner. She didn't speak to me for 2 years. But you know what? When she finally came back, when she finally apologized, our relationship was better, stronger, because she learned I wasn't going to be pushed around. I smiled, despite the heaviness in my chest. "You're a tough woman, Gladys. And you're a good man, Vernon. Too good, sometimes. You raised that boy right. You gave him everything. But somewhere along the way, he forgot what really matters. Don't let them bully you. That house is yours. You earned every brick, every nail, every shingle on that roof." Her words gave me strength, but they also made me sad, because I realized Marcus wasn't going to back down. He was going to push harder. And when people get desperate, when they convince themselves they deserve something that isn't theirs, they do desperate things. Things that can't be undone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind sounded like voices. I kept thinking about Lorraine, about the promise I made to take care of Marcus. But what did that mean now? Did it mean letting him take advantage of me? Did it mean giving up everything so he could have more? Or did it mean standing my ground and teaching him a lesson about respect, about integrity, about what it really means to be a man, even if it hurt us both? I didn't have an answer. All I had was a sinking feeling in my gut that this wasn't over. All I had was the certainty that something bad was coming, rolling toward me like thunder before a storm. And I had no idea how to stop it. Monday morning came like a punch to the face I didn't see coming. I was up early, around 6:30, sitting in my recliner with a cup of coffee that had gone cold in my hands. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus as a boy, and then I saw him as he was now, a stranger wearing my son's face. The sun was just starting to come up, painting the living room in shades of gray and gold, when I heard it, the rumble of a truck engine, deep and loud, the kind of sound that makes your chest vibrate. I set down my coffee cup and walked to the window, my legs stiff and slow. When I pulled back the curtain, my heart dropped straight through the floor. Big. There was Marcus pulling up in his SUV with a U-Haul trailer hitched to the back. The trailer was big enough to hold furniture, appliances, a whole house worth of belongings. Prison a factor. Shanice was in the passenger seat, putting on lipstick in the visor mirror like this was just another Tuesday, and behind them was another car, a beat-up Honda Civic I didn't recognize, with 2 young men inside. Moving guys, I realized with cold clarity. They'd brought professional movers. They'd planned this. They'd actually planned to come to my house without permission, without warning, and take my things. The audacity of it hit me like a physical blow. I stood there frozen for a moment, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. Then the anger came, hot and sharp, rising up from my gut like fire. My hand started shaking. My chest felt tight. But this time it wasn't fear. It was rage. Pure, righteous rage. I walked to the front door and pushed it open so hard it banged against the wall. Stepped out onto the porch in my undershirt and old jeans, barefoot, not caring how I looked. Marcus got out of the car first, and I saw him hesitate when he saw me standing there. But then that fake smile spread across his face again, and he started walking toward me like everything was fine. Like this was normal. "Morning, Dad," he called out. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" I didn't answer, just stood there with my arms crossed, watching him approach. Shanice got out, too, already barking orders at the moving guys. "Start with the living room furniture," she said, pointing at my house like she owned it. "We'll take the couch, the dining table, the TV stand, and that antique cabinet in the corner. Be careful with that one. It's probably worth something." My vision went red. I walked down the porch steps, my bare feet hitting the cold concrete. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Marcus stopped halfway to the gate. "Dad." "Hey. Listen, we're just trying to help you transition." "Transition?" I almost choked on the word. "You mean steal my furniture?" "It's not like that," Marcus said, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. "We talked to a lawyer, a real estate attorney, and he said that because Mom's gone, and because you're not, well, you're not in the best health, we can assume power of attorney if we can prove you're not capable of making sound decisions about your property." The words hit me like bullets. Not capable? Boy, I am more capable than you'll ever be. I built a life. I raised you. I worked for 40 years and never missed a day. And you think you can come here with some lawyer's words and steal my house? Shanice stepped forward then, hands on her hips, chin up like she was ready for a fight. "Mister, Hayes, we're not stealing anything. We're trying to help you. Look at this place. The yard's overgrown. The paint's peeling. The gutters are full of leaves. You can barely get up the stairs without holding the railing. You're not capable of taking care of this property anymore. And frankly, you're being selfish and unreasonable." "Selfish?" I laughed. "And it came out wild and harsh? You call, showing up at my house with a moving truck, being helpful? You call, trying to take everything I own, being reasonable?" "We're family," Marcus said quietly, finally looking at me. His eyes were wet, but I couldn't tell if the tears were real or just for show. "We're supposed to look out for each other. Mom would want this. She'd want us to take care of you." That's when something in me snapped. Hearing him use Lorraine's name, hearing him twist her memory to justify this robbery, it was too much. "Don't you dare," I said, my voice shaking. "Don't you dare bring your mother into this. Where were you when she was dying? Where were you when she was lying in that bedroom, in so much pain she couldn't sleep, asking for you? You were too busy with work, too busy with Shanice, too busy building your career. But now that there's something you want, now you're worried about family?" Marcus looked away, shame flickering across his face for just a second before Shanice jumped in. "This is business, Mr. Hayes, and the sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for everyone. We have legal grounds to proceed, with or without your cooperation." That's when I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who'd been backed into a corner and decided to come out swinging. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Open the gate. Come take a look around. See what you came for." Marcus frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" "You'll see." I turned and walked back into the house, my bare feet slapping against the porch boards. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode right out of my chest. But I wasn't scared anymore. Not even a little bit. 'Cause I'd spent the last 3 days preparing for this exact moment. And they had no idea what was waiting for them on the other side of that gate. I stood in my living room, just inside the door where I could see through the window, but they couldn't see me clearly. My hands were still shaking, but not from fear anymore. From anticipation. From the satisfaction of knowing I was about to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. Marcus and Shanice were at the gate now, Marcus's hand on the latch. The moving guys were hanging back by their car, looking uncomfortable. One of them was on his phone. The other was smoking a cigarette and staring at the ground like he wanted to be anywhere else. Smart men. They could sense something was wrong. Marcus opened the gate. The hinges squeaked. I'd been meaning to oil them for months, but never got around to it. He stepped through first, and I watched his face change in real time. The fake smile disappeared. His eyebrows went up, his mouth fell open. He stopped so suddenly that Shanice nearly ran into his back. "What the—" she started, but then she saw it too. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes went wide as dinner plates. Her phone slipped from her other hand and hit the concrete with a crack, because my front yard wasn't a yard anymore. It was a construction zone. I'd spent the last 3 days, while they were avoiding me, while they were planning this little ambush, tearing my property apart. The grass was gone, ripped up in huge chunks and piled in the corner by the fence. The flower beds Lorraine had planted were destroyed. Dirt and mulch spread everywhere. The brick walkway was broken up, pieces stacked in uneven piles. The driveway was covered in gravel, sand, and construction debris. And right in the middle of it all, impossible to miss, was a sign, 6 feet tall, professional quality, the kind contractors use on big jobs. It said, "Property under Majar renovation. No trespassing, estimated complexion." 8. 10 months owner, Vernon Hayes.
2 weeks after the big confrontation, on a Tuesday afternoon when the construction crew was on lunch break and the house was finally quiet, I got a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a second my heart jumped, thinking maybe it was Marcus. Maybe he'd come back to apologize. Maybe we could finally talk like father and son instead of enemies. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Marcus standing there. It was someone I hadn't seen in 32 years. My brother, Leon. Leon was 5 years younger than me, which made him 68 now. Though he looked older, his face was gaunt, skin hanging loose on his bones. His hair had gone completely white. He was wearing clothes that looked 2 sizes too big, and he was leaning on a cane. But his eyes were the same. Still had that spark, that mix of mischief and regret that had defined him our whole lives. "Vernon," he said softly. "Just my name. Nothing else." "Leon." We stood there for a moment, 2 old men staring at each other across 3 decades of silence. Then he smiled. Small, sad, but genuine, and said, "Can I come in?" I stepped aside without a word. What else could I do? He was family. He was blood. And God knows I needed family right now, even family I'd sworn I'd never speak to again. We sat in the living room. Leon lowered himself into the armchair with a grunt of pain, and I noticed how his hands shook, how his breathing was labored, how he looked like a man who was dying. "I heard about Marcus," he said after a long silence. "Heard he tried to take your house." "Who told you?" "Mrs. Bapey. Gladys. She called me last week. Tracked me down through the church directory. Said you might need family." I almost laughed. Family's what got me into this mess. I know. And I know I ain't been much of a brother. Haven't been any kind of brother, really. But I'm here now. If you'll let me be. I looked at him hard, searching his face for lies, for angles, for some sign that this was another trap. "Why now, Leon? After all these years? After everything that happened?" He took a deep breath and I heard the rattle in his chest. "Because I'm dying, Vernon. Lung cancer. Stage 4. Spread to my bones, my liver. Doctors say I got maybe 4 months. 5 if I'm lucky. And I've been thinking about all the people I wronged, all the bridges I burned. Yours was the first one I wanted to fix." "Dad," the words hit me like cold water. "What?" "Cancer. Found out 6 months ago. Been doing chemo, but it's not working. I'm dying, brother. And I don't want to die with you hating me." I sat back in my chair, stunned. "Leon. My little brother. The boy I used to protect from bullies in the schoolyard. The teenager who used to borrow my car and bring it back with the tank empty. The man who borrowed $8,000 from me in 1987 to start a business that never existed. The man I swore I'd never forgive. He was dying. I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "For the money. For lying. for disappearing, for missing Lorraine's funeral, for not being there when you needed me. I'm sorry for all of it. I felt tears stinging my eyes. Why'd you do it? Why'd you steal from me? Because I was scared, and weak, and stupid. I owed money to the wrong people, and I thought I could gamble my way out of it. I couldn't. Lost everything. Your money, my marriage, my self-respect. And I was too ashamed to face you, so I ran. Been running ever since. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, I could hear the construction crew coming back from lunch, the sound of truck doors slamming. Inside, the clock on the wall ticked away the seconds. Finally, I said, I forgive you, Leon. I forgive you. His eyes filled with tears. You mean that? Yeah, I mean it. Life's too short to hold grudges, too short to let pride keep you from the people you love. Leon reached across the space between us, and I took his hand. His grip was weak, but it was real. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had family again. Real family. Not the kind that wants something from you, but the kind that just wants to be with you. We talked for hours that day.
About the old days. About our parents who died 20 years ago within 6 months of each other.
About the mistakes we'd made and the lessons we'd learned too late. Leon told me about his life. 3 failed marriages, 2 kids he barely knew, a career that never took off, a lifetime of bad decisions that led him to dying alone in a studio apartment in Petersburg. Don't let Marcus end up like me, he said as the sun started to set. He's made mistakes, but he's still young. He can still change. He can still learn. I don't know if he wants to learn, I admitted. Then you make him want to. You fight for him, even when he's fighting against you. That's what family does. Dodge it. That's what I should have done for you. I thought about those words long after Leon left, promising to come back in a few days. He thought about what it meant to fight for someone. Thought about whether there was still hope for me and Marcus, or if we'd crossed a point of no return. Leon came by 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. Each visit, he looked weaker, thinner, more tired. But we talked like we used to when we were kids, before life got complicated, before money and pride and all the rest of it got in the way. On his last visit, he could barely walk. I had to help him from his car to the house, his weight heavy on my shoulder. We sat on the newly rebuilt porch. The crew had just finished it that morning, and it was beautiful, stronger than the old one, and watched the sun go down. You did good, Vernon, Leon said, gesturing at the house. This place looks better than ever. Cost me everything I had, I admitted, but it was worth it. Was it, really? I thought about the question. Thought about my empty bank account, my broken relationship with Marcus, the loneliness that filled every room of this house. I don't know, I said honestly. Ask me again when this is all over. Leon smiled. I won't be here when it's over, but I'll be watching. From wherever I end up. He died 3 days later. Peaceful, in his sleep, exactly like he wanted. I got the call from the hospice nurse at 6 a.m. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in my hand, and cried for the brother I'd lost twice, once 32 years ago, and now forever. The funeral was small. Just me, a handful of people from Leon's apartment building, and Pastor Daniels. Marcus didn't come. I'd called him, left a message about his uncle's death, but he never showed, never called back. That's when I knew how deep the rift between us really went. At the funeral, Pastor Daniels asked if I wanted to say a few words. I stood up in front of that tiny group and talked about second chances, about forgiveness, about how life's too short to waste on anger and resentment. My brother wasn't perfect, I said, my voice shaking. He made mistakes. Big ones. But at the end, he tried to make things right. He tried to heal what he'd broken. And that took more courage than holding a grudge ever did. I wasn't just talking about Leon. I was talking about Marcus, too. About myself. About all of us struggling to be better than our worst moments. After the funeral, I went home to my half-finished house and sat in the silence. The construction crew had another month of work left. The place was starting to look good. New roof, new porch, fresh paint, updated electrical. But it felt hollow. Empty. What good was a beautiful house if you had nobody to share it with? That night, I made a decision. I picked up the phone and called Marcus. It went to voicemail. "Son," I said, "I know you're angry. I know you think I'm being stubborn and petty. Maybe I am. But your Uncle Leon died yesterday, and you weren't there."
But that wasn't the best part. The best part was the crew. I'd spent my last $5,000, money I'd been saving for emergencies, to hire Patterson Brothers Construction, a local company run by two brothers I'd known for years. And they were everywhere. 6 men in hard hats and work boots, tearing things apart with enthusiasm. One was on the roof, pulling off shingles and tossing them into a dumpster. 2 more were demolishing what was left of the front porch with sledgehammers. Bang, bang, bang. Another was operating a small excavator, digging up the foundation on the left side of the house. The noise was incredible, like being inside a war zone. Marcus just stood there, frozen, his face pale as milk. "Dad!" "What did you do?" I stepped out onto what was left of the porch. Just a platform now, no railing, no steps. Had to jump down about 3 feet to reach the ground. Felt good. Made me feel younger than I had in years. "I'm renovating," I said loudly over the construction noise. Got tired of looking at the same old house. Figured I'd fix it up, make it nice again. Maybe add a second bathroom, expand the kitchen, put in new windows. These boys from Patterson Brothers say it'll take about 8 months, maybe 10. Could be longer if we run into problems with the foundation or the plumbing. Old houses, you know how it is. Once you start looking, you find all kinds of issues. Shanice's face had gone from shock to fury in about 2 seconds. B- Her voice came out as a shriek. "You can't do this. We had an agreement. We were supposed to..." "Supposed to what?" I interrupted. "Move in? Take over? Sell my house without asking me? Without even having the decency to discuss it like adults? We came here to help you," she yelled. "You came here to rob me. And you thought I'd be too old, too weak, too stupid to stop you. Well, surprise." Marcus finally found his voice. "Bigoting Dad. This is insane. How much is it costing you? Where did you even get the money?" "Used my savings. Every penny I had left. Worth it, though. Because now you know something important. You know that I'd rather spend my last dime tearing this house to the ground than let you have it." One of the construction workers, big guy named Tommy, played football with me back in high school, came over and clapped me on the shoulder. Mr. Hayes, we're about to start on the electrical. You want to come inside and show us which outlets you want moved? Be right there, I said. Then I turned back to Marcus and Shanice. You made your choice, son. Bees. You chose money over me. You chose her over your own father. Duh. So now you get nothing. This house? When I'm done fixing it up, if I even finish before I die, I'm gonna will it to the church, to Pastor Daniels and the congregation at New Hope Baptist, to people who actually give a damn about me. You won't see a dime. You're being petty, Shanice spat. You're being vindictive and cruel. Maybe I am, but I'm being honest. And that's more than I can say for you. Marcus looked like he might cry. Or punch me. Or both. Dad, please, we can talk about this. We can work something out. Nothing to work out. You showed me who you are. Now I'm showing you who I am. I'm a man who won't be pushed around. Not by you. Buh. The moving guys were already packing up their dolly and straps, clearly wanting no part of his family drama. Shanice was screaming at Marcus now, right there in my destroyed front yard, blaming him for not handling this better, for not being man enough to control his father. Marcus just stood there taking it, his shoulders slumped, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. I turned and walked back to the house, had to climb up because there were no steps, and went inside. My legs were shaking so bad I had to sit down on the couch. My chest hurt. My head hurt. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than fear and sadness. I felt powerful. I felt alive. Big. Through the window, I watched Marcus and Shanice argue for another 10 minutes before they finally got in their car and left. The U-Haul trailer was still full of nothing but air and broken dreams. And I sat there in my half-demolished house, surrounded by the sound of hammers and saws, and I smiled. After Marcus and Shanice left, the house felt different. The construction noise should have made it feel chaotic, but instead it felt purposeful. Like something was being built instead of torn down. But as the day wore on and the workers went home, as the sun set and the house got quiet again, a different feeling crept in. Big loneliness, the kind that settles into your bones and won't let go. I sat in my recliner, the same one I'd sat in for 20 years, and I cried. Not little tears. Big, ugly, shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep inside. I hadn't cried like that since Lorraine died. Hadn't let myself. But that night, I let it all out. I cried for the boy Marcus used to be. I cried for the relationship we'd lost. I cried for Lorraine because she would have known what to do. Bad she always did. She had this way of seeing through people's nonsense and getting to the heart of things. Vernon, she used to say, love isn't about giving people everything they want. It's about giving them what they need, even when they don't know they need it. I think what Marcus needed was this hard lesson. This brick wall he couldn't climb over or go around. But God, it hurt. That evening, around 8 o'clock, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but some stupid, hopeful part of me thought maybe it was Marcus calling to apologize. I picked up. Dad. His voice was tight, angry. Nothing like an apology. We need to talk. I think we said everything we needed to say this morning.
No, we didn't.
You embarrassed us. You made us look like fools in front of those moving guys, in front of the neighbors. Mrs. Gladys was watching from her window, and you know she's the biggest gossip on the block. Shanice is furious. She's threatening to what? I interrupted. Leave you? Maybe she should. Maybe then you'd see what's really important. Maybe then you'd remember that family isn't about money and property. It's about loyalty and respect. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing, could hear Shanice in the background saying something I couldn't make out. Then Marcus said something that cut deeper than anything else. His voice went cold, distant, like he was reading from a script. You're a selfish old man. Mom would be ashamed of you. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my chest tighten, felt the air go out of my lungs. My hand gripped the phone so hard I thought the plastic might crack. For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Then the anger came roaring back. Your mama, I said slowly, deliberately putting weight on every word, would be ashamed of the man you've become. She didn't raise you to treat people like paychecks. She didn't raise you to lie and scheme and try to steal from your own father. She raised you to be honest, to be kind, to be a man of integrity. And somewhere along the way, you forgot all of that. So don't you dare put her name in your mouth to justify what you tried to do. He hung up just like that. Didn't say goodbye, didn't argue back. Just clicked off, and I was left holding the phone, listening to dead air, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. The house was dark except for the glow of the streetlight coming through the window. In the silence, I could hear every sound. The refrigerator humming, the clock ticking on the wall, a dog barking somewhere down the street. And I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe I was being selfish. Yeah. Maybe I should have just given them what they wanted, let them sell the house, move me into some tiny room in their new place, let them have their way. Big. It would have been easier. But then I thought about Lorraine, about the promise I made to take care of Marcus, and I realized something important. Taking care of someone doesn't mean letting them walk all over you. It doesn't mean enabling their worst impulses. Sometimes taking care of someone means standing up to them, means teaching them that respect matters more than money. Pay vision that integrity matters more than convenience, even if they hate you for it, even if it costs you everything. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart, but I didn't regret what I'd done, not one bit. The next few days blurred together in a haze of construction noise and loneliness. The Patterson brothers' crew showed up every morning at 7 sharp. And by 7:15, the hammering and sawing would start. They were good men, did good work. Tommy would check in with me every few hours, show me their progress, ask my opinion on things. "Mr. Hayes, you want the new porch painted white? Or do you want to go with the gray? Mr. Hayes, we found some rot in the bathroom subfloor. Gonna need to replace it. Mr. Hayes, you want recessed lighting in the kitchen or stick with the old fixture?" I appreciated being consulted, appreciated being treated like a man who still had a say in his own life. But every question also reminded me how much money this was costing, how my savings were evaporating day by day. And every question reminded me why I was doing it. Marcus called 6 more times over the next week. I didn't answer. He left voicemails that ranged from angry to pleading to threatening. "Dad, this is ridiculous. Call me back." "Dad, we need to discuss this like adults. You can't just ignore us." "Dad, Shanice talked to a lawyer again? If you're spending money recklessly, it could be evidence of diminished capacity." That last one made me laugh. Diminished capacity. Like fighting back against thieves was evidence of insanity. Shanice called, too. Left messages that were all threat and no plea. Ooh. "Mr. Hayes, you're making a big mistake. We have legal options. We can get a court order to have you evaluated. We can prove you're not competent to manage your own affairs." I deleted every message without listening to the whole thing. Then, on the Thursday of that week, Mrs. Gladys came by again. She brought a casserole, chicken and rice, the kind Lorraine used to make, and sat with me on what was left of the porch. We had to sit on paint buckets because the porch furniture was in storage. "You holding up okay?" she asked. "Define okay," I said. She smiled. "You did the right thing, Vernon. Even if it hurts. It hurts like hell. Good. That means you still care. The day it stops hurting is the day you've lost yourself. My daughter and we didn't speak for 2 years after I told her no about the house. 2 years. I missed her every single day. But you know what? When she finally came back, when she finally apologized, our relationship was stronger than it ever was. Because she learned something important. She learned that I wasn't going to be a doormat, and she respected me for it. "What if Marcus never comes back?" I asked quietly. "What if this is it? What if I just destroyed my relationship with my only child over a house?"
Gladys put her hand on mine.
Her skin was paper thin, covered in age spots, but her grip was strong. "Then you'll know you stood up for yourself. You'll know you had principles and you stuck to 'em. And maybe, just maybe, one day he'll understand. Even if he doesn't, you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror and know you didn't let anybody make you small." I thought about that a lot, about what it meant to be small versus what it meant to stand tall, about whether pride was worth losing your family over. I didn't have easy answers. All I had was the feeling that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. all I had was hope that somehow, some way, this would turn out right in the end.